Welcome in, folks, for the first episode of the 2025-26 NHL Bruins season. This is What's Bruin. I'm your host, Chris Nozick, joined by this season's co-host, Gayle Trioni. Gayle, thank you for helping us not miss a season while Dom is still dealing with family stuff. And I know it's been a couple weeks since we did our last show, which officially kicked off the year, but we actually have rookie camp to talk about. We have captain's practices to talk about. But before we dive into all that, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I don't know if you can hear it, but the car alarm of the car outside my window started going off as soon as I clicked play for the intro. I'm lucky I got the windows slammed shut during the intro, and it just started because it wasn't going off not 4 minutes ago. So, other than that, though, I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Yeah. I have to say that I apologize for not correcting you sooner. I really just noticed it again. It's Treyani.
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 Sorry about that.
It's all right. Listen, it's my husband's name. It's not mine.
Well, in fairness, at least I try.
Yes. Yes.
So, anyways, I know you have some spots where you want to get started, but real quick, my first question to you, and we talked a little bit about it with Dom on the Next Shift pod last week. Bruins players trickled in for captain's practices last week. Some players weren't there the first day, some more were there on the second day. Do you have any worry, any, we'll call it negative thoughts towards anybody not being there last week?
No.
Okay. I didn't
No.
think so. I didn't think so. We're usually pretty much in agreement on those kinds of things.
No,
I
because
just know it was
if
a big thing for some people.
yeah, if you go back and look every year, there's key players that are missing. There's, whether it's left lingering ailments, whether it's family stuff, people moving, getting kids acclimated to new schools. There's so much. They're very informal. The key players that you want to be there were there. But not everyone's going to be there because, a lot of players haven't moved to Boston yet. So their families are still in other cities. And so they're just trying to get their lives. As long as they're there for the first day of camp, I'm good.
Yeah, and I just figured out that the chat on YouTube looks disabled, but
Ugh.
every other, yeah, I don't know, it's stupid. We'll have to. I'll definitely look into the settings on that because I thought I had it sorted out and figured out, but we can get all the comments on YouTube. We can get all or on Twitter, that kind of thing. So we'll look at other options like Twitch and stuff like that too. I know we're on there right now, but we really got to vamp that up. We have a lot fewer issues on there, but anyway, yeah. I mean, my thought was last week, you just don't know why they're not there. And until you know that the player kind of looked at it and said, F that, I'm not going.
Right.
Everything else is a real reason not to be there because, like you said, it's one of the most informal things that a player could possibly be asked to attend.
Right.
So, with
I mean,
that,
it's not like Fraser Mitten. Did you watch any of his availability today?
today I haven't gotten to yet. No.
So they asked him about being at camp. He goes, I got a phone call and told I had to be here. So basically he had no choice but to be at rookie camp. You know what I mean? So
But I don't hate that. Like,
right. I don't hate that either. I'm fine with him being there. I'm fine with Dan Schmaltz being there. I'm fine with any player that the Bruins want there to get the extra time, to get the extra competition. I'm good with that. 100% good with that.
It's also
it's not like they told David Pastrnak he had to be there.
Right, but they also don't have a lot of players who qualify to go. And so
Right.
it's like for every player you have that's eligible, you might as well send them for one, getting their legs under them for the season.
Mhm.
And for two, like Fraser Mitten has an opportunity to show that he can go and be a leader of this group.
Right.
Yes, he's been in the NHL. He should use that to his advantage. Someone like I'm I'm trying to think of some of the other players who are there, but like even Ty Gallagher last year came into Providence, played a big role. He can be a leader for some of the other defensemen in the group. Loke Johansson, first time he's touching ice with some of these players that he's joining.
Mm-hmm.
So that's someone that could use some time with Jackson Edward. Honestly, Ty Gallagher, Jackson Edward should be the two leaders of that defense in some capacity. On the front group, it should be, Don Zlotch-Mellis and Fraser Mitten who should be taking control of the forward group. You need some of those guys there. So I'm not upset by it at all. I'm glad to see them going, honestly. And hopefully we can find a reasonably good stream of when the games start playing.
Yeah, and the other thing is too is you got to remember too, the other one that's there too is Riley Duran's there, Brett Harrison's there. You know what I mean? So you have a lot of key players that if you want them to make a push, whether it be to solidify their spot as a leader in Providence or make a push in camp in Boston, whether it's Zlotch-Mellis, whether it's Fraser Mitten, it doesn't matter who it is. If you want them to push at all, getting them at rookie camp and getting that extra competition in those games in Buffalo is only going to benefit the organization, never mind just the players.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned Brett Harrison because I'm not as when you mentioned him in my head, I immediately went, yeah, I don't really care about him, but it did bring someone else to mind who I am very interested to see, and that's Dalton Bancroft.
Yeah.
I'm out on Brett Harrison because he has shown more reason to not be in on him than he has shown to be in on him. So I'm not like, am I glad he's going? Yes, because it gives him more of a chance to say, look, I figured it out.
Right.
I don't think he's figured it out, but I'm open to him changing my mind about that. He shies away from physicality, and he doesn't take the body on hits. He'll do the skate by until he gets that out of his game. I mean, great. You're on the last year of your ELC. I don't see you coming back. Sorry. Right. But I know there were some other comments that were made during captain's practice for those who were there that you wanted to kind of kick us off with.
Yeah. So my biggest one, there's two that really, really struck a nerve with me. And one of them is Jeremy Swayman and the other is Nikita Zadorov. Two players who I 100% believe that the Bruins need this season, especially Swayman, to have that bounce back year. And it was Zadorov that said the quote that I've said about Jeremy Swayman since the end of last year. The Bruins are going to have a chip on their shoulder this year. And I said that that's the way you want Jeremy Swayman to play. And Jeremy Swayman said in his media availability that he's a completely different human being. That after what he went through last year, the contract, not being at training camp, hindsight is 2020. He thought that he could prepare being at Boston University. He now knows that there's such a big difference between that and an NHL training camp. He, the way that he performed at Worlds is he touched on that. Zadorov talked about how that the team is reading everything that everyone's writing about them, and that is fueling them. If you wanted bulletin board material, they have it.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I think we can all agree last year proved that just like any other team, they need to be healthy. Mm-hmm. Health is the number one factor for any team, because if any team out there, I don't care what team it is, if they lose their top two defensemen who are legitimate Norris candidates, like where's Colorado if Cale Makar by himself gets hurt? Forget if they also lose Gerard. Right. Like, name any team out there. Dallas lost Miro Heiskanen for most of last season, and they were only okay because Thomas Harley stepped up so significantly.
Right.
But also, they only lost Heiskanen. So they only needed one defenseman to stand up. Last year, you lost almost, it seemed like everybody was getting hurt.
Right.
So if they can remain healthy, they're going to be a much better team than I think a lot of people are giving them credit for right now.
Well, so the Hockey News has them, and I don't take a lot of stock. I'm not saying that the Hockey News is be all end all, but everyone has a right to their opinion. But they have them finishing last again.
Yeah,
I
I don't
don't
see it.
see I see them battling for the top 3 in the division, not finishing last. I have them, I think, again, and I mean, like I say, every single time you and I do a podcast, I say this ad nauseum. When you have a healthy Elias Lindholm that finished the season the way he did last year, and then he built that chemistry that they were hoping for with David Pastrnak, and then, oh, by the way, Morgan Geekie had an even better season. He built that chemistry with Morgan Geekie. So now you have that line, you have 3 separate goal scorers, 3 separate playmakers.
Yeah.
Now you have a healthy defense with Hampus Lindholm coming back, Charlie McAvoy coming back. You have a goaltender who took the net from Linus Ullmark 2 years ago and would have been in the conversation probably for the Vezina last year had the contract stuff not come up. You know what I mean? And then you have Nikita Zadorov, who, yes, he again was one of those players that you wanted to rip your hair out at the beginning of the season. Like, why did John Sweeney sign him long term? Because of the penalty minutes, to this, to that. But again, a lot of people forget that they're human beings. You know, he went from a Western Conference team in Northern Canada to the heart of New England, an original 6 team in the toughest division in the NHL. And then he lost 2 leaders on the blue line, and you saw down the stretch him playing better because he got more comfortable. Now he is a full season.
Don't forget the coaching change he went through.
And he went through
all the drama with the coaching change.
If you listen to his comments too, like he talked about the fact that, you know, when they asked him about the coach, he's like, he never got used to a coach in Boston. I mean, he had Claude Julien for 19 games, and then Joe Sacco, who was an injury. It's not
Jim
like
Montgomery.
He was here for years and knew Sacco. You know what I mean? So now has a new coach, and he said, and it was funny because someone asked him, because he's called out LA for their style of play. And he said, are you worried that Marcus Sturm is going to bring that? He's like, we're not playing 1-3-1.
Yeah.
So
I don't think any players want to play it. So
no, I really think that this team, I don't think enough people, maybe I'm looking through black and gold colored glasses. But I don't think enough people give this team credit for when they're healthy. Yes, they don't have the goal scoring that Florida has. They don't have the goal scoring potential that Edmonton has. They don't have the goal scoring potential that even Toronto has, because they don't have a ton of elite goal scorers, right? They have David Pastrnak, and then they have, you know, surrounding players. But if you can get 15 to 20 goals from various players up and down the lineup, being hard to play against and having that solid goaltending is going to win you more games than it's going to lose you more games.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Toronto's taken a significant offensive hit. They don't have Marner anymore. They basically swapped out Mitch Marner in their lineup for Nicholas Waugh and Matthias Maccelli. Right. And both solid players, but together they don't come up with the offense that Mitch Marner produced by himself.
No, but they still have Austin Matthews. They still have William Nylander. You know what I mean? So they still have their 1-2 punch
Sure.
When healthy, because it's not like Austin Matthews has been healthy all the time.
Right, and they still have to deal with John Tavares staying healthy. He's still their 2C,
Right.
and Max Domi is still their second line left wing.
Right.
So let's not act like they have more than 5 players, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys who all have 30 goal potential.
Right.
They've got Nylander, Matthews, and Nyes, who are their leading scorers. Beyond that, yes, Tavares can score. He's a scoring threat, but he hasn't been consistent over the last few seasons. Matthews hasn't been consistently healthy, and Nyes has to prove he can do it again. He's got all the same questions that we have about Morgan Geekie. So you're much more on par with Toronto than you are off par with them.
Right.
And if you have them winning the division, then Boston can compete.
Right. Well, and a lot of people do have them. They have a lot of people have Florida dropping off. I'm not sure I have Florida dropping off completely. But you look at how consistent the Bruins have been, minus last year, for the past 10 seasons, right?
Yeah.
They were consistently either winning the division or second in the division. But last year was more of a fluke than it was a common, what's the word I'm thinking of? Or normality. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it was the outlier.
Right. So, and I think that people just want to hate that Don Sweeney didn't go out and get that star forward. But what star forward was available? Like, we've talked about this, right? Like, Mitch Marner was always going to Las Vegas.
Yeah, clearly, especially if he was talking to guys at Four Nations about it.
Right.
That was the place he thought about.
Right.
If he hit free agency, maybe he doesn't land in Vegas because someone else throws him a boatload of money. But once he had those conversations in his head, he was going to Vegas.
I think in part of it, too, is getting out of that division mentally is going to help Mitch Marner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the Atlantic division itself, it's such a you look at any other division. What other divisions are as tight as the Atlantic division? Even like you go back. I mean, Montreal's back in the mix. You've got Tampa, who's always in the mix. You've got Toronto, Boston, Florida. Ottawa's getting better, but even Buffalo's getting better. You know what I mean? Like, any one of those teams can make the playoffs.
I'm not taking Buffalo serious until they prove to me that I should.
No, but
I get what you're saying.
I'm saying is, but they go on a hot enough run, and like if the Bruins face the same type of injuries, then maybe Tampa Bay faces injuries. You like when you have that division, if any one of those teams or two of those teams at the top falter, that's Buffalo's in. You know what I mean?
They could be, absolutely.
That's the way that they can make in. It's not like, and Buffalo's not as bad as
they play.
That's the thing. Like, I still can't figure out what their problem is.
So
like, they don't play to their potential at all.
Not that this is turning into a Sabres podcast, but I really think it has a lot to do with, it's going to sound corny, but the vibes in the room.
Yeah.
Like, there's only so much Alex Tuch can bring. And if you look at some of the guys they brought in, I think Kesselring will really help solidify the right side of their blue line, which was a major problem for them the last couple seasons. Josh Doan can help quite a bit as well. Like, you were going to lose JJ Peterka. Once he decided he didn't want to be there anymore, you had to make the best of that situation. Now, could they have maybe got a little bit more for him from somebody else? Who the hell knows? But they identified what they needed, and that was a right side defenseman, and they got one.
Right.
And they got a pretty damn good one too. Beyond that, though, I also think an underrated pickup for them is going to be Alex Lyon, because Alex Lyon is the one who helped push the Florida Panthers two years ago into the playoffs. Remember when Bobrovsky kept getting pulled?
Right.
So he's the one who helped carry them. I just think that's going to be more of an emotional lift, someone in the locker room who's basically sitting there going, like, yeah, this has been bad for years, but like, so is Florida. Now look where they are. Like once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. Now, this is a team that's still super young, but then you have guys like Josh Norris who's in there. I mentioned Alex Tuck before, and then you have some hungrier young guys like Zach Benson, Yari Kulich, Ryan McLeod is still in there. Jordan Greenway is a veteran. Like they still have plenty of young talent. Jack Quinn too, and then look, I'm not going to list every defenseman, but you've got young talent there too. So things can click for them. It's just they have to learn not to get so down on themselves. And let's face it, ownership has to get out of their own way.
Right.
But until they prove they can do it, I can't take them serious. But
yeah,
talent-wise, they're there. But anyway, the rest of the teams in the division, though, like I can see Tampa taking a step back still because, I mean, they're still running with Anthony Cirelli as their 2C. Gage Concalves is their second line right wing. So, like, they have 4 really good players in Gensel, Hagel, Point, and Kucherov. And yes, they still have an elite, highly ceilinged goaltender in Vasilevsky, Victor Hedman on defense. But beyond that, I mean, Ryan McDonough's older. They're relying a lot on JJ Moser, who's still learning and very, very young. And so, like, they still have their own flaws.
Right.
So they can very easily take a step back. They're not going to be the team that we're used to seeing. Florida injuries concern me, but they have really good depth to handle those.
They do. But the other thing is, too, is that they're starting to have what the Bruins have. Or had, I should say. They have the depth, they have the talent, but a couple of injuries could affect how they play. But again, if they can just get into the playoffs, then that's a whole different ball game. Because you saw Matthew Tkachuk was injured pretty much for the rest of the season last year after 4 Nations. You know what I mean?
And I guarantee you they are scouring the new LTIR rules right now. They're learning all about them so they can find whatever the next loophole is because they want a 3-peat.
Well, and the other thing is, too, is you have to remember that they also brought back a ton of their roster. And more than they did the first year they won the Stanley Cup. And the players that they lost weren't, you know what I mean? Like they filled them with other people. And even like, I'll say it again, having Brad Marchand on your third line.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I'm sorry, but like they have lower lineup depth where they'll be able to ice a compliant roster that contains Barkov, Tkachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Verhaeghe, and Marchand.
Mm-hmm.
They'll still also be able to include Jones, Ekblad, and Forsling on defense and Bobrovsky in goal. Beyond that, they have, like, do they need Evan Rodriguez every night at a $3 million hit to the playoff cap? They don't need him every night because they have a guy like Eetu Luostarinen. One of those two can be in the lineup. They don't need both of them. Mm-hmm. And then they also have Anton Lundell on a really good deal for what he can bring. And then you have, they'll probably find a way to bring in a guy like Tyler Mott again. They have Luke Kunin signed. They have AJ Greer, Thomas Nosek. Like those guys are all under $900,000.
Who? Jesper Boquist.
Yep, Boquist.
Who else? They just signed another Bruins player too. Who was it?
Let me see if I can bring it up here.
I should say a former Bruins player.
They have Noah Gregor, Tyler Mott, and Ben Harper on PTOs. Michael Benning was signed to a 1-year deal. They brought in Danil Tarasov as a backup, so they got cheaper there too. I don't see any other moves from this year. They still got Puljujarvi in Charlotte. Like, none of these guys are going to cost them too much against that playoff cap.
Right.
And any of them can play fourth and third line roles when you have Brad Marchand as a scorer on your third line, centered by Anton Lundell, and then you have Bennett, Samoskevich, Reinhart, Barkov, Verhaeghe as filling out the rest of your scoring needs.
Right.
All you got to do is roll them out and say, hit people. Like,
Right.
You'll be fine. And that's once they get to the playoffs.
Oh.
So
It's Brandon Bussey.
Oh, Brandon Bussey. That's why I was
just like, they're becoming Bruins South.
Pretty much.
I'm like, I knew they signed another former organization player. I just couldn't figure who it was. It was Bussey. I just looked up the roster.
Yes, they brought him in. But you know what? In a playoff roster, if you need to save a few extra cap hit bucks, I would have to check to see. But I mean, swap out Tarasov for Bussey, right? Because if Bobrovsky goes down for the game, you're probably losing it anyway. And the next game, you can put Tarasov in there. But right. You mentioned Montreal as a team that's also getting better. They're getting better, but I do wonder how. I think it's going to take them another year to really get under their belt, because now you've added Noah Dobson to the mix. How's he going to mesh with Lane Hudson on the back end? They've got to sort out their goaltending a little bit. I'm not overly concerned about them. They're still going to be good, but I think they'll be able to hang. You're going to see, I think this is going to be one of the tightest races in the Atlantic that we've seen in a while. I don't think anybody's going to all of a sudden, there might be one team that just comes out and puts up over 100 points, but I think everyone's going to fall within that, 6 or 7 points of each other kind of finish.
Right.
Because even Detroit addressed their biggest need, which was in goal. They'll get consistent goaltending from Gibson this year. I think he's refreshed to be out of Anaheim and on a team where he can be the guy again. And, they got some young blood coming in. I mean, now you got the rivalry with Ullmark in goal for Ottawa. I just, picking a division winner is much tougher than, I get why you said it was the Hockey News that has Boston finishing last. Like, could it happen? It could. Mm-hmm. But I think if Boston finishes last, you're going to see first and last in the division within 8 or 10 points of each other. I don't think it's going to be any sort of runaway.
Right.
So, you also mentioned Zadorov's comments. Were there any other comments from last week's captain's practice that really stood out for you in any way, positive or negative, really?
I think, what really stood out to me was, a lot of people like to call Jeremy Swayman egotistical and very selfish, because the comment he made last year about setting the market for goaltenders, right? That, he made the comments about taking business classes and he understands the business part of it. You need to reset the market. If you listen to him last week, he was very humble about the fact that he was naive in the process. You know what I mean? So as much as he understood, and he went through it and he understands it, and he's very thankful that his teammates embraced him. I don't know who came up with that there was a discord in the locker room last year. That was absolutely, I never felt it. I never saw, other than Nikita Zadorov making the comment about when Swayman offered to fight, what's his name, and I can't even think of it. And Zadorov's comment was, "That's our job. Would it, get back in the net?" That wasn't, and to me, that wasn't a discord. That was basically like, you do your job, we're going to do our jobs. You know what I mean? But I don't think it was a we hate Jeremy Swayman because he missed camp and it's his fault our season sucked. I
No.
don't believe that at all. I don't know where that narrative came out. I don't think that the locker room was disjointed. I think that the whole team, not from a character standpoint, but from the upheaval of a coach that, I mean, you got the feeling that Montgomery didn't want to be there, right? You saw
Oh
it in
yeah.
his
I
mannerisms, his body language, the fact that he didn't resign. There was so many different factors. So he was the one that you were like, okay, he doesn't want to be here. And that translated. So whether or not the players fed off of that to start the season, which is why they started off the season so bad, that could be debated. But the players not standing up for each other, that's BS. They 100% all stand up for each other. The fact that the organization had no choice but to basically gut the team at the trade deadline wasn't because the locker room had a cancer or the team was imploding within itself. It was because John Sweeney had no choice.
Yeah, you had to hit the reset button, and
Right.
that was the time to do it. I
Right.
think in the long run, I think we'll look back at that trade deadline as perfect timing because it's been called by some the perfect tank job because the players were never going to intentionally lose. Let's be honest about that. Players will
Right.
never intentionally lose. There's too
No.
much, and coaches will never coach a player to lose. That's
Mhm.
not going to happen. So instead, if you're a general manager and you're looking at your situation going, we need the best possible draft pick we can get, what can we do? What can we do ethically and legally within the rules to make our team as least threatening as possible to other teams? Well, I think having John Farinacci and guys like that on your second and third line kind of fits that bill. Vinny Lettieri is your second line right wing for a while. Like, that kind of fits. And it worked. Now, you also got lucky because James Higgins specifically fell to you in the draft. But let's not act like we wouldn't be having roughly the same thought process if they had gotten a Roger McQueen or a Porter Martone or someone else in that category, because someone like that was going to fall to them.
Right.
Now, would we be as thrilled if it was a right wing like Porter Martone as opposed to a center like James Higgins? Maybe not as much, but you were still going to get a damn good player.
Right.
And now you're in a position, and I do want to ask this question to you in a minute. It was a thought that I had the other day just driving. I was like, I got to ask Gayle on the show. Just because I just mentioned James Higgins about it. But you still would have a young, exciting prospect, which is something the team hasn't had in a while. Like, Fabian Lysell was that for a little bit, and then he fizzled out. And then Dean Letourneau never caught that excitement because, well, we all know why they gave up Linus Ullmark for that one. I feel bad for him because he's always going to be the return for Linus Ullmark.
Well,
which sucks, but
I think it depends on how he develops at BC because
absolutely.
because the non-casual fan understands that he went to BC earlier than anticipated and that he also making the switch from the two leagues is a huge factor. It's even bigger than going from the AHL to the NHL or the NCAA to the AHL,
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm just saying I think some people are always gonna associate him as that, and it's a tag he'll never stop chasing, just like DeBrusk, Senyshyn, and Zboril will always be the infamous 2015 draft that Don Sweeney's always tagged with, no matter what.
People just need to get over it and let it go.
I agree, but you know how people are.
Because you know what? Joe Thornton was gone and they got Marco Sturm. And now Marco Sturm's the head coach. And how many people hated that Michael Connell traded Joe Thornton?
Oh, he was crucified for it.
And rightfully so, right?
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, here's the question: do you win in 2011 if you still have Joe Thornton?
Well, I mean, so there's so many different things that you could say about that. I mean, do you win in 2011 if you still have Blake Wheeler? You know what I mean? So there's so many different. I mean, you can't if you go down that what if rabbit hole. Then what if? I mean, there's so many different things. Could they have won in 2010 had David Krejci and Tuukka Rask not gotten hurt during that Philadelphia series? Could they have won in 2010? And then would 2011 have happened? Because
I was going to,
there, huh?
The ripple effect of that is, do you even have that as a problem in 2010 if you still have Joe Thornton? Because if you have Joe Thornton and Patrice Bergeron down the middle, do you still get David Krejci?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so there's so many different things that you could look at. Does Ray Bourque, if Ray Bourque never went to Colorado, does the ripple effect start back then?
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like the list could go on and on and on and on and on. And it's,
let's go all the way back. If Bobby Orr stayed healthy.
Right. Well, Kim Neely.
Yep.
Had the lights not gone out in the Garden, would Boston had beaten Edmonton? You know what I mean? There's so many. I mean, come on, we could go back.
It's all. But we know this. They wouldn't have gotten there 3 times in the last however long it's been if they didn't trade Andrew Raycroft for Tuukka Rask.
Right.
So,
but Tuukka Rask is the worst goaltender that ever played in a
He's so bad that he has the all-time wins for a goaltender drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he never played for him. He's that bad.
Speaking of the Toronto Maple Leafs, so where did he go? The since Leafs last cup, that Twitter handle.
Oh, yes.
They're making me laugh. 21,328 days since a cup. 2,038 days since losing to an AHL Zamboni driver. This is my favorite one. 28 days until starting another season of failure.
That is great. That is
And he literally started that countdown of the days starting to another season of failure. He started that like a long time ago. Like this isn't something new. Like I literally died laughing when I saw that.
Probably started it once they got eliminated from the playoffs.
It's just hilarious. That team, Bruins fans love to hate their goaltenders. Toronto fans just love to hate their team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why they lost Marner. They picked someone and they chased him out of town.
Yeah.
And no, he shouldn't be getting doxxed online. Does he have to learn to play through some of the negativity around there? Yes, some of it comes with the territory, but threats and stuff like that, that's not part of the job. It's not part of anybody's job.
No.
So
there's too many athletes that's where social media is like such a horrific thing. There's so many athletes that people think they have the right to talk to these athletes or any human being, never mind just athletes. It doesn't have to be anyone famous. I mean, I got told I should go kill myself because I had an opinion about the trial in Canada. You know what I mean? It's like, what gives people the right to talk to people that way?
Yeah, there's a line that needs to be redrawn, and it seems to be fading more than it's getting drawn. So
no, it's gotten worse, and it's not okay. It's not okay.
On the plus side, though, we are in a perfect line to have Vegas beat Toronto in the Cup final.
Yeah, but why do I want Toronto to be in a Cup final?
I don't, but I want them to lose to Vegas.
Yeah, that would be kind of funny.
And Marner gets the game-winning goal.
That would be hilarious, actually.
No, the thought that I had, the question that came across my mind. All right, because
Oh yeah,
obviously
back to that.
there's a lot of not a lot of discourse, but there's one player in particular whose name has been thrown out there quite a few times, not necessarily entirely in Bruin circles, but Bruins fans would be familiar with him if they watched World Juniors a couple years ago. So my question to you is, would you consider trading James Higgins as the cornerstone piece to bring in Mason McTavish?
Me
Yes.
personally,
Gives you some pause.
1-for-1.
I think you'd have to do a little bit more than 1-for-1 because McTavish wants a significant pay raise. So I think you'd have to do a little bit more than that. But I do think in that you could get rid of some of your filler, like a Casey Middlestat, or it might cost you. I don't even think it would cost you that much in a defenseman, simply because they have no room to bring in defensemen. But he would be the cornerstone of it. So it'd probably be him, maybe a pick, and a couple of your lesser quality contracts, I guess you could say. So, Casey Middlestad, maybe a Pavel Zacha, but they're one in the same. So they'd probably ask for Zacha over Middlestad. You know what I mean? Like, there would have to be some back and forth there, but that type of deal.
I mean,
remember, the question is just, would you consider it?
I would consider it. I mean, I think you have to, because you have to.
That was my thought.
He's a young player who's still developing. He's on a crappy roster.
He's someone who could step in and be your 1C over Elias Lindholm. He's good enough, he could bump Lindholm to your 2C spot.
That's something I think that you have to consider that, but in the same sense, because he's young enough. It's not like he's older. He's young. He's what, 23, 22, 20, 22, 23, right?
Yeah, I think he's 23. I'll pull it up.
So he's young enough that you have a future with him.
He's 22. I was wrong.
He's 22. Okay. So
he's already wearing a letter for them.
Yeah, see, but but you got to look at that roster.
It's not that bad anymore.
No, but it's very young. It's very so for him to be wearing a letter is not outlandish because of, like, he wouldn't wear a letter in Boston. He wouldn't wear a letter in Toronto. He wouldn't wear a letter in Ottawa. You know what I mean? Like, he's not wearing a letter anywhere else. Not even in Chicago, because Chicago has, not even in Pittsburgh, and the two teams that are rebuilding the most, you know what I mean? Like, he's not wearing a letter there.
All I'm saying is it shows some good qualities in the player for down the road.
Yeah. I think that you would have to, if you're Don Sweeney, if you're not looking at that or considering it, then what's your famous line? He's not doing his job. You know what I mean? Like, he has to do his job to answer the phone and discuss it, and then think and weigh the options for what's best for Boston. Like, is it best to do it now or in the future? Like, where do you see the team going in the future? What can you build around him? If he's looking for that pay raise, do you then have the money to give to other players next year? Do you try and get some other scoring? You know what I mean? So, if you're Sweeney, you have to look at it, but that doesn't mean he pulls the trigger.
Yeah, that was my thought. I know some people, another contract dispute player, they would want to avoid it. Some people are now going to start looking at Higgins as untradeable, and so I just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Contract disputes, are not necessarily indicative of the player wanting to leave the team.
No, it's about
You
what
know
they
what I
want to
mean?
get
Like,
paid.
perfect example, William Nylander. He never wanted to leave Toronto. And there was a contract, there was a huge contract thing with him. Jeremy Swayman does not want to leave Boston, but there was, you know what I mean? There
Yeah.
is not all contract disputes are indicative of a player going, I hate it here. I don't want to be here.
I know. I'm just saying
No,
some
but I'm
people
not
don't want to
saying
bring
you.
it in.
I'm saying other fans that are saying, oh no, he's in a contract. We don't want him. He's a headache. Well, that's not always indicative. And first of all, we've learned that it's not always the player. Like
Oh, yeah.
William Nylander was not the reason why that contract in Toronto got held up.
Yeah.
Johnny Gaudreau was not the reason why his contract with Calgary got held up. You know what I
Right.
mean? That was his agent. Jeremy Swayman was not the reason why his contract in Boston got held up. And oh, by the way, what's the factor in those three players?
They all have the same agent.
So I mean, I think that people forget that. I think people forget that
Which just made me have to go look who McTavish's agent was.
And it's not him, is it?
It's not Louis Gross.
Okay. God, I think I might have banged my head up against a wall.
No, he is with Patrick Morris of Newport Sports Management. So it would have been hilarious if it was, though, because then it would have just been, yep, they're in for a long one here.
Yeah.
Actually, he does not have any Bruins in his book here. So interesting. But anyway, I'm trying to think, because I know there's not as much as there's a lot going on. There's not a lot that's changed.
Right.
They're actually finally back on the ice. So I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to rack my brain if there's anything else that we really need to touch on. Is there anything I'm forgetting that you can think of that we absolutely have to get to?
No. Oh, we can talk about the fact that they've basically said that they're starting the season without a captain. Some people are having a meltdown.
Of course.
I, for one, I don't understand why people are like, oh, you got to just, what's the problem? Just give it to David Pastrnak. Well, you can't just give it to David Pastrnak, because we've seen last year that other people, yes, he stood out the most after, because he was alone on an island. He was the only one wearing a letter last year after Brad Marchand, Charlie Coyle, Brandon Carlo, and Charlie McAvoy, and Hampus Lindholm. Those were the only players that were wearing letters over the last couple of years. And all of them are gone. Whether it was injury or trade, they were all gone.
He was literally the only one with a letter on his
was
chest.
David Pastrnak. And then you saw Nikita Zadorov step up and step into a role as a leader without a letter. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying Nikita Zadorov is the next captain of this team, but new coach, new team, no captaincy. Let it play out naturally. Let it play out organically.
Also, the players have come out and said, yeah, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So if they don't have a problem, because I don't think any players come out and said, yeah, we don't have a captain, and I think that's going to cause us some issues, even off the record or anything like that. There hasn't been anything like that. So why do you care? Like,
right.
If the players don't care, it's kind of like with the new CBA. If the players don't care that they lost something, that, the double retention or whatever, right? Why do we care? I care because it limits some player movement and stuff, but I also see why they did it. So, like, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just going to have to adjust going forward. And, you have to realize, I hope Puckpedia starts adding, like, days since trade to someone who's been traded with retention, so it's easier to track.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Puckpedia, if someone there is watching, you might want to do that, or cap wages. Someone should do that. But still, it's not the end of the world. And I know people are like, oh, well, that means, you're not going to be able to trade someone with double retention. Yeah, so what? Like, it wasn't done frequently. Let's think about that. Like, we ended up doing it with the Orlov deal, but it cost us that much more to do it.
Right.
And so I think more aggressive teams are going to be helped by that rule, to be honest with you, because now Sweeney doesn't have to give up that extra draft pick to attach to salary to stay in Minnesota.
Right.
Only to then get screwed over by getting an injured player later in a separate deal. But anyway, last show, we completely neglected something else that you wanted to talk about, mostly because we got off track with all the Bruins
we had
questions.
Kenny too.
And we had Kenny. I'm not blaming Kenny. I'm looking forward to doing tomorrow's show with him.
No, and I'm not blaming Kenny. He was a welcome addition. I had a lot of fun with him, and I'm looking forward to having him on again this season.
But we geared away. We steered away from it, and so I promised you we would be able to bring it up tonight. You are also on your rink report. You are also covering the Boston Fleet.
Yes.
Now, we have a few things in the works, nothing ready to be announced just yet. We have a few things that are in the works that aren't ready to be announced yet. But for now, we want to bring some of that coverage here because it's still Boston hockey.
Right.
And while it's not the Boston Bruins, for now, we want to keep people who are interested up to date on what's going on with the Fleet. So why don't you share with us some of the latest with the Fleet going into a new season for them? This is what, the PWHL's third year?
Third season. And if you've paid attention at all,
little bit,
so many things happened to the Fleet this off season. First, with the expansion draft, they lost Hillary Knight. And then Courtney Kessel stepped down as head coach to go and coach the women's program at Princeton. They brought in Chris Berry. So a lot is happening. A lot is happening in the Boston Fleet. There's now rumors that camp is going to start in November this year, and that the season's actually going to start in November. There's not been a direct announcement from the league as to when camps are going to start yet, or when the season's going to start, but it was Ian Kennedy who's very tapped into the PWHL that announced it on his Twitter that was the rumor he was hearing. I'm excited to see what this Fleet team can bring this year. They obviously were able to retain Aaron Frankel, who is arguably the best goaltender in the league, Megan Keller, one of the top defensemen, and Alina Mueller, who Alina Mueller can be such a phenomenal player. And I'm curious to see if Chris Berry uses her in a system that's more indicative of her play than what Courtney Kessel did. So I'm curious to see, because and honestly, Mueller was injured a lot towards the end of the season last year. And I think that if she had played in that last game, they may have made the playoffs. Not to mention Aaron Frankel came back when she was injured. So there's a lot of things that happened last year in that season, but there's a completely different team hitting the ice this year in Boston.
For both teams.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, and you said that they're talking about having camp start in November.
Yeah.
And so that would presume the season should start in December instead of January.
So the camp would start beginning of November. So their season would start before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are they also going to be affected by the Olympic break this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you have to understand the PWHL had 3 stoppages last year for Worlds, for their rivalry series, and then I forget what other series. But so they always have those stoppages as well. And so that's part of it. I think that could be why they're trying to start earlier too, because of the stoppage. Like last year, the Fleet were away from Boston for like 3 weeks because of the breaks and their road trip. They had the longest road trip, and it was like they were out and see because they did the state, not the stadium series, but they did like the takeover series. So they were in Seattle, then Minnesota, then they were, it was like they were just traveled everywhere. And now with the league expanding to Seattle and Vancouver, it's just going to add that much more to it.
Yeah, I thought adding those two teams were a little bit weird just because you have Toronto, Ottawa, New York, Montreal, Minnesota, and Boston. Like Minnesota's the far west team, and now you're adding cross-country flights. But I mean, if the interest is there, the interest is there. So.
Well, and they sold out in Seattle when they played at that stadium. They pretty much filled that stadium. And the fact I was surprised that they didn't get a team in Detroit. I have a feeling that's going to be the next team that comes into the league would be Detroit, because they did when they played there, even though they didn't have, like, they played in Seattle, they didn't have a team. They played in Detroit, they didn't have a team. And the effort, the interest was there. So I'll be curious to see what the league does going forward. This league is definitely built to sustain, unlike the other leagues that preceded it. So
yeah, definitely. It sounds like they have a much better plan backing everything. And like you said, if they're doing these neutral sites games to test markets to see what the draw is there, bring some excitement in, and then, kind of say, okay, let's do an expansion team here. I think you're also going to see, because in the NHL, we're seeing a lot of teams sell off partial ownership. Right. Just because they're worth so much. But my question to you is, would you rather own 10% of an NHL team or 100% of a PWHL team, which is going to explode in value in the next couple of years as well?
Well, so they don't have individual owners yet in the PWHL.
Okay. They're still under that one ownership umbrella.
They're under that umbrella. They don't have the, so if by chance when they do get to that point, then that's when you want to be, and you know what I mean? If they get to the
right
point
now
where
they would invest in it,
and
own part of every franchise.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. That certainly makes the business side of it a lot more intriguing as well, because my question is, because I mean, just like the NHL, it's considered a private league. It's not publicly traded or anything like that. But at this point, like, if you have a single owner for all of these teams, obviously he doesn't care which one wins, because he's got to look out for the best interest of the overall product. But if you're that owner, why would you sell off individual teams?
Correct.
So, and I presume that owner also holds like the commissioner role.
No,
he has someone else in that role.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They don't technically have a commissioner.
That's why I said role, because it wouldn't be his title.
Yeah, who the PWHL's like executive staff is, it's a little bit different the way it's done, because
that's going to affect everything, all the way from ticket sales, the collective bargaining agreement, and all that stuff. Because I mean, I would imagine the PWHL PA has a lot more negotiating power when all of the teams are owned by the same entity.
Right.
So hopefully they're not looking at any work stoppage anytime soon as they continue to grow. But it sounds like the owner has some reasonable thought process to growing it. So
yeah, I'm trying to look at the original articles that I wrote about the league, like what is the basically to say, like, I'm trying to remember exactly like how but like it's they're based in LA, and like Billie Jean King is part of it, and so it's a group. It's not like one individual.
Yeah.
But it's hard to explain.
That's okay. I know I kind of caught you off on some of the questions, so
No, it's quite all right. Mark
but
Walter. It's wholly owned and operated by the Mark Walter Group.
okay. Let
Okay.
me see if I can. Walter Group. So let's see if we can find out who's part of that group. Oh yeah, big investor.
Yeah. The Dodgers, the Lakers, the Sparks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. 7.3 billion in net worth, roughly, with about 300 billion in assets under management. So
Right.
they've got the money. But I mean, you also don't get that successful without doing a few things right. So,
Right.
and obviously he's going to want to protect his investment. So work stoppages are not good for him. Any of those types of things are not a good look for such a young league. So, anyways, I know a lot of our fans are not as interested, but anything else to add for the fleet coming up? Or is that kind of where we're at for right now until their camp starts?
The only other thing is, I think so. Last year they played 2 games at BU, and I think that they're going to play more games at BU this year. So their home rink will still be the Songus in Lowell, but they're playing at Boston University, which definitely helps with, the getting there to see them play. But if you haven't seen a PWHL game on TV or live, it's a lot. It's definitely fun. There's a
I've
lot of
caught a few.
physicality. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of speed. I mean, obviously, you're not going to see NHL hits, but you're going to see NHL type stops by the goaltenders. You know what I mean? Like
Look,
some of the
you're not going to see the 250-pound 6-foot dude crash into another 6-foot 250-pound dude, but they can lay some hits. I've caught a
Oh, yeah.
few of them on TV, and and it seems to me like sometimes there's a little bit more offense too. Like organically, there's just a little bit more offense.
Yeah.
And
well, because the ice is different. You know what I mean? Because it's not as physical. I mean, there's the physicality to it, but it's not quite as physical as the NHL. So when they're skating up the ice, you're 5'3" woman who is gonna split your defense because they don't have the size that the NHL players have. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of talent in the league. There's a lot of fun for this league. And it just keeps growing year after year. So I'm curious to see how the team changes based on the last 2 seasons under Courtney Kessel going under Chris Sperry now. So
yeah, it's certainly going to be a very interesting season to watch for the entire league. But I mean, like you said, I've only caught a couple of them on TV, but they've been every bit as exciting and fun to watch as any NHL team that you can think of. And like you said, you're not going to get the full blown physicality, but they throw some hits, but the talent level shines through. So I do recommend people watch it if they get some chance. Tickets are way less. Also, going to throw that out there. And they're doing a lot of the fun, interactive fan experience type things to help grow the game anyway.
Yeah,
so you're going to get some good stuff.
Stuff that you see like at the AHL level. Like that fan experience and stuff. That's what you're seeing in the PWHL.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know we were going to try to run this till about 8 o'clock. Unfortunately, without the comments on YouTube, we're running a little lower. I know that you put a cry out for people to DM some questions. Did we get anything through that channel at all?
No, nothing.
Okay. I know we've had a lot of people watching, but I know a lot of people tend to throw us on in the background of doing things. So we appreciate everybody who has us on right now. We're up there in viewers, so I appreciate that. Do you have any final thoughts for today? I know it's going to be a little bit shorter because there's just not a lot changing from the last time we were on, but they're finally on the ice, so we're going to start getting more going forward. So we are back to weekly.
I think next week too we'll have the prospect challenge to fall back on to discuss, what we saw from the rookie camp and prospect challenge, and any more players trickling in that may be out there. I got to filter through some of the comments from Sweeney today at the golf tournament. So I think we'll definitely have more to talk about next week and then each week going forward.
Yep. So like I said, we're back to weekly here. We will be doing Wednesdays at 6:30 every week at this point, barring something coming up for one of us. So we'll put the reminder out with the link so you can watch us on YouTube. We will get the YouTube comments sorted out, I promise. I think I know what the setting is. I just got to go check it for today's show and see if I'm right. But beyond that, I know Kenny and I will be on tomorrow, 7 o'clock for the Next Shift pod. We will be doing a lot on the youngest players in the league, those AHL, NHL kind of breakthrough players. So we're going to have a long conversation about some of the guys to watch who are much younger across the league. I'm sure some of the Bruins players will be on the list. So that'll be a very exciting show for us tomorrow. And with that, my last thought, as usual, go Bees.